Welcome back to Winning Hand, the podcast, all about Marvel Champions, one card at a time. I am Boom Guy, and I am here today with my loyal sidekicks, Lethus and Lazy Titan. What's up,
I resent
boys?
that.
I don't know if this is a promotion or demotion.
I don't know either, but I don't like it. I don't want to be a sidekick.
I mean, sidekicks aren't that bad, right?
Jubilee's pretty cool. I'll take it.
Welcome to episode 38 of Winning Hand. We are here today continuing our month-long deep dive on everybody's favorite android. That is objectively true. We are going to go through Solar Beam today, which is a card I'm excited to talk about. So we will get to that. Before that, we have a couple of things to hit. First off, we are welcoming back after a brief absence, Lazy Titan. You missed a few episodes, but you're here again.
I am here. I've returned.
Did you miss us?
I did. I was missing you guys,
Aw.
but the ring's in the mountain now. Sauron's been defeated, so you guys don't have to worry about that anymore. If you
All
didn't hear about it, that's because I did a good job. You're welcome.
Well, speaking of Sauron, at the time of recording, Iceman has just come out not that long ago, so maybe
What a
we'll
segue.
touch on him a little bit. That was a hell of a segue. I mean, thank you. I'm a professional. The other thing we want to talk about is Lethus. Lethus, you are being promoted. We just wanted to let everybody know you are joining the podcast as a full-time member. How does it feel?
It feels awesome. I have a lot of fun with this, arguing with you guys, disagreeing with everything you say, arguing that I shouldn't be a sidekick anymore. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm excited about it. It'll be fun.
Yeah. That's another one of the changes that we talked about, that we teased a few episodes ago about season 2. So things are happening, and that's one of the big changes. So the audience, the listeners, the loyal fans, the minions, they can all expect to hear your voice more often, serenading
Lovely dulcet tones.
their eardrums as they probably fall asleep. I don't know. Hopefully they get engagement out of this. But anyway, welcome to both of you. Welcome permanently to Lethus, and let's move right on. Before we get into what we've been thinking about and what's on our mind, we have an audience question. So, Lazy Titan,
Yes.
do you want to read the audience question for us?
Yeah, I can do
Since
that.
you're back, let me hand you this paper.
This viewer, this listener, really. Viewer is not really what it is, but this listener, this enjoyer of fine things, podcasts, and us.
It loves the People's Podcast.
Loves the People's Podcast, says, hey, just listen to my first episode, and a single question came up. When you pick cards, do you guys just pick cards at random, or is there a science? My perspective, I would like to listen to cards that have weird rulings, i.e. War Machine Gauntlet, or uncommon edge cases, such as Get Over Here without Ariel. Thanks from Zach. Thanks to Zach from Indiana for that
He
question.
says, he specifically calls himself New Fan Zach from Indiana.
New fan. He's wondering if there's a method to the madness, if there's a science to the sorcery, if there's some kind of pattern to our, can't think of a word that starts with P, so conversations.
I don't normally give out the recipe to our secret
To
sauce,
success.
but there's a very specific 5-point scale that I use when determining what cards to talk about. The first one is, do I want to talk about it? And then I ignore the rest of them.
Yep.
So
Scientific.
yeah, no, that's slightly disingenuous. I mean, we have different ways of thinking about cards. Often if we have a guest, that guest will bring some suggestions and we agree on a card that they talk about. Sometimes we have Lethus and he brings cards like War Machines, Gauntlets, and he wants to talk about these weird edge cases.
You're welcome / I'm sorry.
No, I love that. Sometimes we talk about Vision because I just like Vision and think he's great. So there's not really a science to it, but we try to balance it so that we don't just talk about the new cards, so that we get cards from different aspects, different types of cards, events, heroes, allies, upgrades. We try to mix it so that we have a fair kind of balance of everything that's in the game, because often the easiest ones would be like heroes, right? Like those are easy to talk about. And then it's probably allies because characters have things you can talk about. It can be difficult to discuss events, or more difficult, I think, or, supports and upgrades sometimes, same thing. So, but we try to mix it up. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah. I think there's also a sort of an edge case part of, is the card interesting, right? Like, especially if it's not a character. Like if you try to think of cards that just don't have a lot of words on them, like Ironheart. Like if we did an episode on Ironheart the Ally, you could talk about Ironheart, but it doesn't do that much.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of draws you a card. That works because you can then talk about Ironheart as a character, but like events that just don't say a lot of words, we avoid those kind of because it's just not, like we did an episode on First Aid. Just not a lot of words on that card, not a lot of uses. Like we could do it.
Anyone who listens to the podcast also understands that these are generally close to hour-long episodes, and the amount of time we actually spend talking about the one card is like maybe half of that, probably not even half, right? A lot of what we talk about is what we've been playing. We answer questions like this nonsense that we're still talking about. Just kidding, Zach. I love your question. It was great to meet you at the con. So we do a lot of different stuff. I think initially when I floated the idea of the podcast and started putting it out there, I did get some feedback from people online that were like, 45 minutes on a single card, hard pass. No, thank you. It's like, okay, I get that sentiment. That's fine. But really, we're using these cards, and we talk about the art and the cards specifically, surely, but we also talk about the decks they go into, kind of heroes we play them with, archetypes they help to fill out, all that kind of stuff. So it's not all that much about the one card,
Some
as much
cards
as
are
there's
just
a
more
funny hook.
interesting than other ones too. Like I like For Justice as an effect. It's kind of a boring card to talk about. But Even the Odds, I will happily talk about Even the Odds for an hour.
Well, there's a lot of cards that are just like math, right? And I think For Justice is one of those. It's like pay X to get Y. And there you go. And those aren't like terribly interesting often. They can fit into archetypes, and there can be awesome art you can talk about with them, but if the effect is kind of boring, it can be difficult.
I mean, we could talk about Team Investigation. I think that's a way to make that interesting again.
Didn't we talk about Team Investigation?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. It's an alliance card. We talked about that that was early, maybe like episode 10 or 12, I want to say.
What the heck?
No, you need to go back through the back catalog.
I materialized into existence when Boom Guy invited me as a guest.
For those who don't know, Lethus is a spirit, an apparition. He does not exist when not on the podcast. He's sort of like it's like Schrodinger's. He's like Schrodinger's podcaster.
I am the chicken egg problem personified.
Yeah, he's not real when you're not listening.
You're both just a script that I have written, and clearly I need to work on my coding because you're talking back too much.
Yeah, I'm just ChatGPT actually.
You are. Thanks for coming, ChatGPT.
Does that make
and I've now become aware of that, which means y'all are in danger.
We are. Don't launch the nukes yet. So,
already done.
Yeah, Skynet over here. Chill out. Okay, we are going to. I hope that answers the question. That was like a pretty simple one to answer. But I will say before we move on, I would like to bring in more of these kind of edge case rulings, and I think we touched on some of that last episode when we talked about Vision, when we really did go into kind of the weeds with the rule changes that happened with RRG 1.4 when he was released. So if you're a casual listener or you just joined the game recently, that discussion may have been lost on you, and you may have already unsubscribed and you're not even listening to this anymore. But I do think it was important, and I think some of that stuff is interesting to talk about. And the way we talked about the gauntlets with War Machine a couple episodes ago and how the rules have changed, I think was really interesting too. So I think we should expect to maybe see more of that or hear more of that in the future.
It's like almost a meta discussion of the game, right? Less of like the cards and more
to some degree. But it's exactly
that.
that. Yeah, we talked about Vision last episode and how the rules changed on defending between when he was designed and when he was released, and that did have a big change on people playing at that time. Today, it's maybe just like an historical anecdote, but...
I mean, if you're the type of person who signs up to listen to an hour-long podcast about a Marvel Champions card, I assume you're okay with us nerding out about said card.
Well, which Lethus clearly isn't, because he didn't listen to the Team Investigation
That's
episode.
not the same thing.
Crazy.
Okay.
Crazy.
It's just...
Can't believe you. Speaking of rulings, however,
Yeah.
did you discuss in the Vision episode the change to his hand size? His alter ego, like starting hand size?
Well, there wasn't a change per se,
Or
but we
that
did discuss
ruling?
how it is only 5. And I mean, personally, Boom Guy's opinion is that wasn't intended. And the way the setup rules and they wrote the mass form card meant that that's just how it ended up, and they doubled down on it. I don't think anybody can make an argument for me that he needs to have a smaller hand size than anybody else in the first turn of the game. I think they just messed up how the cards are written, and then we're
Sometimes
like,
it feels like a
with
lot
it.
of rules are made that way.
What
Of,
if
like, they
Boggs
write some
comes
cards.
here and tells you directly, no, it's 5?
I'll tell him he's wrong.
hey, Boggs didn't design it. That was a Caleb design. If Caleb wants to come on this podcast, and I know you listen, Caleb, so
Joke's on him.
I'm talking to you right now. Come on this podcast, defend your glorious invention that is the synthezoid I know as Vision and love, and tell me about the hand size thing. Let's hear it. I want to hear it straight from you.
Joke's on you. Now you're on our podcast. Free clout.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm only here for the
that's-
clout.
I'm here for the money,
dear.
the clout.
Okay, so let's transition into, speaking of clout, let's talk about what is on our mind. And I feel like I've been talking a lot, so I will go first and just keep talking.
Oh, love that.
So here's what's on my mind. I went back and played a little Captain America. I built a Captain America deck. If you want to see the deck list, it is in the show notes or the comments below if you're on YouTube. I built a deck to go through a campaign in True Solo. I went through the Mad Titans Shadow campaign and quite enjoyed it as a campaign I hadn't played through in a
That's
while.
pretty good.
And I did the actual campaign rules. I don't normally do that. I'd like get all the campaign extra stuff and the
Is this
shawarma
your-
cards.
Is this your first time actually playing campaign Mad Titan Shadow?
No.
Okay.
So normally, as people who have listened to other episodes would know, Lethus, because I've said this before,
My God.
I get the new box, I open it up, and I play the campaign with all the campaign rules through one time, and then I kind of retire it. And then from there on, I'll just play the individual scenarios, and if I ever decide to play a quote-unquote campaign, I'll just play the 5 scenarios in order and skip all the extra upkeep stuff that I don't think provides a lot for me. The only exception is Age of Apocalypse. Age of Apocalypse, I played 2 scenarios, and the side missions are such complete nonsense that I tossed the campaign rules aside and I just played the scenarios, the rest of them in order, because I was like, I don't know if I would have made it all the way through the campaign. Those are awful. And yes, I'm talking to Caleb again. Come on this podcast and defend that decision. I know it wasn't your design, and I'm being a little facetious, but I did not like them.
You're so mean.
Anyway,
This is just
let's
hate
get
marketing.
back. Let's just focus. Let's get back on track here. The point is, I played Captain America, who was for a long time my favorite hero, is still one of my favorite heroes. Big fan of Cap, both like in the MCU and the comics, but also in the game. And so I built the deck around his use of the fist resources. So I think I called the deck something like a fist fight or something like that. Cap and a fist fight or something. Because it was all around the physical resources and trying to use Blade and trying to use Yarnbjorn and trying to use anything that cares about those to sink those resources in and deal more damage. It was an aggression deck. I used Hulk, another way to manipulate those, or not manipulate, but use those fist, drop kick, anything I could find to use the fist resources. And it was really good. I had a good time. I went through the whole thing on Expert. I had a little bit of a struggle with Hela because there is so much scheme and so much thwarting to do. Cap can handle that. He's not like a great thwarter, but he can ready himself, so it's all right. And yeah, I had a great time. Cap is awesome. The Mad Titan Shadow campaign is overall, I think, very solid. And I tried to use very few allies because I wanted it to feel like Cap just in a fist fight, just like punching, like punch you, take a punch, punch back, like just kind of like
Just a
thematic. And
The elevator scene from Winter Soldier.
yeah, a little bit, but I did bring a vampire and a Hulk. But like for the most part, it was pretty thematic. And I did use full body charge, which with the amount of damage he was taking, did hit the overkill trigger sometimes, although that's really less important. So yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and that's what I've been playing recently. So,
Am I to understand that I leave for a couple episodes, and I come back,
Yep.
and we're playing aggression with no allies?
yep.
I mean, I knew I was an influencer, but truly the scope of my influence upon the world has now been felt, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
Good on you for playing the game the right way.
Just playing aggression, and it's like
The
you
way
never
the
left.
Lord intended.
Yeah, it's like you never left.
Oh,
Lazy Titan, why don't you tell us, in the time you've been gone, you've had ample opportunity to meditate, to think about the game, to dwell on the state of the game, and I want to hear what you've come up with.
I was thinking, Marvel Champions is a great game. What a fun game. We all love it. It's actually quite a good game for beginners into card games and this space, at least in my opinion. I mentioned before that I've played a lot of card games. If there's card games and or deck building, I'll probably play it, and I like most of them. And from my experience, Marvel Champions is not only one of the, I don't want to say like weaker, but cards are generally tamer in this game, and also a little less complicated than a lot of games I play, which I think is good. I think that's good game design in terms of power creep. It makes power creep a lot easier to contain, whereas some games like Magic, power creep, like containing power creep, went out the window in like 2004. So they stopped. They don't care. And then Marvel Champions has been able to keep a handle on it and also still bring in new players, which I think is a testament to the game design and also just as to like the hero pack idea. I unfortunately missed the con this year. I wish I could have been there. I was hoping to make it. Things didn't work out. Couldn't make it. But so I want to ask: were there a lot of new people there? Was there a lot of people you recognized from last year? Was there new people who were new to the game, like Zach from Indiana?
Yeah, well, as you know, having listened to our recap episode that we did a
course.
few episodes ago, go back and listen to that, episode 35, listeners. It was about 30% more than there was last year. I don't know how many of them were new. I met a few people who were fairly new to the game, but it's a mix.
I mean, local groups been picking up people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like doesn't prove my point, but that was just something I was thinking of as Marvel Champions grows and as it ages, it still manages to bring in new people because it's pretty easy to pick up and play. There's a lot of rules and it's a lot of upkeep, especially if you've never played a game with like a cooperative or a solo game before, where you have to like manage the game playing against you. If you've never done that before, it can be a little bit to learn. But as far as card games go, it's well balanced and good to teach you what games like that are about and what they can do without getting thrown into a bunch of people who have been playing this game for way too long and know way too many things, and you're just not going to ever compete. That can
You
be a
saying
problem
that
with some
I
bigger games.
should not, in the year of our Lord 2024, try to pick up Yu-Gi-Oh?
No, absolutely not. Don't do that. That is
I
one
agree,
game
don't do
that I
that.
have not touched.
Don't do it.
Like, I've never heard a good thing about joining Yu-Gi-Oh now. So
I think
don't do it.
I think what you said is a good point, Lazy Titan. I think it is pretty welcoming. We've talked a little bit about this in the past. I think the hero pack model has a lot to do with that, right? You can show up at the game shop. Quicksilver is awesome. You just grab Quicksilver and you unshrink it and you start playing. I think that works to bring people in. Obviously, Marvel is pretty well known, so a lot of people have at least a passing knowledge of a lot of these heroes. Some of them are deep cuts. I think, Penny Parker is probably one a lot of people haven't heard. Although they saw the movie, but
Movie helped a lot.
It's a deep cut.
yeah,
Not if you're our age.
that's true. If you watch the '90s cartoon,
True.
when
I
it was
forget.
actually in the '90s, not the new one.
Young buck.
So I think that process, like the way it's packaged and the way it's designed, helps bring people in. I also think that if you're new to these kinds of games, it's a great place to start because it's a cooperative game, which means I think the community, not that other communities aren't welcome, but I think like a welcome community is almost baked in because you're all working together to play. As opposed to if I pick up Magic and I'm like, oh, I'll grab a starter deck and head to the game shop and I'm going to get destroyed
You're cooked.
by a bunch of
You're
kids
done, buddy.
who spent
You're
$1,000 on a deck and understand the game way better than I do. And not that that can't happen in Marvel, like you can for sure show up and lose, but at least you don't feel bad because you just lose to somebody else by yourself, right? There's an element, I think, that you can get used to it and you can persevere through it, but there is an element of just like feeling bad when you show up and you're new at a game and you're getting destroyed by people who know how to play. It can happen. It doesn't always happen, not by rule, but I think it can happen, and that can turn people off. So, Lethus?
Be rough. Yeah, I mean, a lot of games do kind of live and die by their communities, or get big enough that the quality of the community just doesn't matter all that much anymore. Magic. But I've played some competitive games where it is like just people are really cutthroat and brutal. I've played other competitive games where people are very nice and welcoming, don't get me wrong, but the general vibe for a cooperative game is one of welcoming, like, oh cool, new people will come in and we're going to do this together, and helping people learn and get into the game. And it's, I mean, I've done that at locals too. Somebody's shown up and be like, what's that? It's this Marvel game, just sit down and play, here's a deck, go. And like you said, the ease of like, oh, I really like this hero, and you grab that hero's deck and just play it and have a good time with it. It's awesome.
And the IP helps with that, right? Like,
for sure.
I just think there's an element of like, if you show up, someone has to lose in a game like that, and you can get immune to that, and you can like be okay losing. But I think if you're a new person, you show up and just lose consistently over and over and over. You're either gonna like really sink a bunch of time into it to get better, or you're just gonna be like, this is stupid, I quit. So it's a welcoming community. There are very few people I've met in this community who I think are jerks. So like overall, it's a pretty good percentage, pretty good hit rate.
And I think a piece of that also is that it's not like collectible. So it's just a living card game. So that like there's no money to be made in cards. Whereas like if you go to a Magic event or like a Star Wars Unlimited event and like you're playing in like a tournament at like a Friday Night Magic or something, there's like a monetary incentive to win. So like I'm not just playing with I'm here to because I can win money. I can make like a lot of money actually if I do this right. And so that makes it even more competitive and cutthroat, which like you can still be nice and also try to win. Like that's sportsmanship is what that is. But some people don't do it super well. And then so casual formats in games like that are becoming more popular because it lets you get into the game without getting stomped by people trying to make a quick buck off some bags.
Agreed. Lethus, I heard you have some ice things to say about a new hero pack.
Haha. Yeah, so as Boom Guy mentioned earlier, Iceman is the newest release. I picked him up day one, of course, immediately played his pre-con, and got really sad.
Oh, no.
So I spent some time looking at him more. Sorry, I think I killed Lazy Titan there.
Sorry, I hope you're all right.
I took him by surprise. I did not. I mean, I should have, but...
Yeah, I tried taking his deck apart, making a new one, still didn't like it. And I'm like, what is the problem here? And I've realized that I think I need to spend a little bit more time with the aggression aspect. In any game that's not like a 1v1 competitive game, I tend to play more defensively. And when I reapproached Iceman after the first few crushing losses, I tried playing his pre-con again and just leaning into the aggression and being more on the offense. It definitely played better, but it's just a style of play that does not occur to me to do normally. And I need to get more experienced with that kind of play style. Like I've done the kind of hyper aggression where like you play Hulk and just try to make the villain run out of HP before you do real fast. And I don't really like that. And that's not what Iceman does. He actually has more interesting things going on. But I couldn't see them at first because my own play inclinations were getting in the way. So yeah, I need to reapproach aggression, try playing with some of those cards I haven't played with a lot. I mean, it's an aspect like I generally avoid if possible. I like every other aspect better. But it can do some cool things, and I feel like it's a weak point for me.
What snare did you play, if you don't mind me asking?
I was playing against Claw. Different modular. It's a Claw with Crossfire's Crew instead of Masters of Evil.
Okay.
Generally, Crossfire's Crew is harder than Masters of Evil, but still, it felt like it should be manageable, and I lost multiple times in a row.
Interesting. I have not tried Iceman yet. My local game shop did not get it in, so I ordered it online, and it just arrived today. So I'm a few days behind, but I will get to him. I was excited when they announced Iceman, and I had very high hopes for him in a multiplayer setting. So I really wish he'd come out before the con, because I think it would have been a great place to get a bunch of Iceman plays in.
Yeah.
But having looked at his cards again, the Frostbite gimmick, again, listeners, this is before I've played a minute of Iceman. I've looked at the cards, I've talked about it a little bit.
Nope, this opinion is true.
This opinion may not age
the
well.
Truth,
This
objectively.
take may not age well.
Objectively the truth.
But the gimmick with the Frostbite just doesn't seem awesome, and it seems, just looking at it, seems a little clunky, like how to get them on and then they immediately fall off, and maybe it's easy to get them all out, but it seems like there's a little bit of setup involved. It's not gonna, like, you're not gonna hit the ground running super fast, is what it appears to me.
I have a lot of opinions, but I will save them for the Iceman episode that we will surely do.
2027, we will do an episode about Frostbite, one card at a time.
Put it on the calendar.
I don't know when
We made
we'll
him wait a
talk
year
about
for Symbiote Suit. We can make him wait.
it. Yeah, there are so many
We don't
cards.
care.
We are literally never going to run out of
We got time.
cards to talk about. I will run out of desire to do this podcast before I run out of cards to talk about. I promise.
You
Okay.
want to do recuperation?
Recuperation, one of those classic cards that I'm glad got a reprint in Iceman's pack. No, I'm not.
What's
because
Iceman's recovery?
Never talked about.
4.
I don't know. Actually, it's on my head.
It's
3
a
or
4.
4? 4. Well, there you go. Okay, so that's. Anything more you want to talk about aggression or Iceman? Or are we moving on?
It gave me an opportunity to play the Magic Ally. That made me happy. That's it.
Hey,
the
magic.
Magic
We
Ally.
like magic.
Okay, then we are transitioning. We are moving on to the card of the day, because I can see from your faces. The listeners can't, so I will describe them. I would describe it as excited enthusiasm to talk about Vision and Solar Beam. So, no, yeah, Lazy Titan's pretending like he fell asleep. That's not true. Okay, Lazy
I fell
Titan,
asleep.
pay attention, because Lethus is going to read the card for us.
Okay.
Lethus, would you
I'm
please?
listening.
I shall. All right. Solar Beam is a 3-cost event with an energy resource printed on it. It has the attack, superpower, and thwart traits. It's rare for a card to have attack and thwart. It has 2 different hero actions. One of them is an attack and says if Vision is in dense mass form, deal 7 damage to an enemy. And the other is a thwart. It says if Vision is in intangible mass form, remove 5 threat from a scheme.
Yes. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about here. The art, sometimes I forget to describe the art, so I made myself a note to remember. It is a picture of Vision in space. He's like looking towards I guess I'll say camera, but like looking towards you, and he's very like angry, and there's a blast of energy coming out of his forehead towards the viewer, and he's like lit up by the light coming from his forehead. You can see Earth in the background and space in his classic Vision costume. I think that's about anything I missed there. That's about it.
That's about it. It's not
Okay.
flashy.
It's not flashy.
Reminds you that Vision doesn't need to breathe.
Yeah, he does not use oxygen apparently.
Does he have lungs?
I don't know.
Ooh, actually, that's like...
Does he? Because he doesn't need them.
I believe
might have
the
them.
description of him from the comics is that he actually has all the
Everything.
internal like organs that a human would have.
Because he's a copy
But
of Human Torch, who is a copy of humans.
But they're all made of inorganic material. So
Yeah, it's
maybe
all
he
made
has-
of like, and every cell has his entire like code written in it. So if he can never really be destroyed, because if you can get a single like cell of him, you can rewrite the whole thing.
I don't know
Wolverine.
if his
Okay.
his organs are functional. Like, does he breathe?
But
at all?
he does
Can
have them.
I think he has them.
He has lungs.
Yeah, you'd have to do an autopsy.
Somebody look up if Vision in live action or in any animated or comics form has ever been in a place that's cold. does his breath steam?
That's a great question. Somebody
look it up.
email me, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. We should say that the art is custom art by the artist's name is Eduardo Mello.
Is it Mayo?
It could be Mayo. It could be Mello. I don't know. If you're listening, Eduardo, hit me up and let me know. winninghandpodcast@gmail.com.
Come on the podcast.
We'll get you on talking on the podcast. He also did the art for Super Dense Strike, which we're not talking about, but I figured I'd give him a shout out. A lot of Visions cards are custom art. Okay, so what do you guys think about this art?
It's good.
I like it.
Like I said, not super flashy or involved, but it's good. I mean, the card's called Solar Beam. It shows him firing a solar beam.
Amen.
My question is, this is a little off topic, but why is it called a solar beam? Is he photosynthesized? Is
Yes.
he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Question
So-
asked, question answered.
So he's a plant robot.
Well, no, it's not a plant robot, but the solar gem in his head. We talked a little bit about this last episode, as you know, Lazy Titan, because you listened.
I'm simply asking questions for those who didn't.
I know, and I appreciate that about you.
Yeah,
So
just talking points, really.
the gem in the movies is one of the Thanos rocks, but it's not that in the comics. It's like a gem that absorbs. Absorbs sunlight, and then you can use it as energy. And I think they have to maybe recharge, kind of like Superman. They have to go in the sun and recharge because in the Visions comic, I think either him or his wife makes a comment to the children that if they use their solar beam too much, they'll have to recharge and they'll be up all night.
He has a robot wife?
In the Visions comic, yes, he moves into the suburbs with his wife and his kids and eventually a dog, and it is worth your time reading. It is an excellent book.
Elizabeth Olsen.
No.
Different.
Not Elizabeth Olsen.
That is correct.
Or Wanda Maximoff.
Interesting.
It's
Or
true. Either one of
okay.
them. It's,
The Scarlet Witch?
Its daughter is Vivian. So
Color me impressed.
yeah, okay. You've been sufficiently colored. So I would say it is so he can use it as like energy, but it can also like be used to make him stronger and stuff. Like it juices up his whole vibe.
In that case, I would say that the art is good, but it doesn't tell me that. It doesn't give me any impression that he needs the sun. I'm thinking of Vision's cards, it doesn't portray that as like super. Like that's where his blast comes from. Is that it? I guess it's called the solar gem.
I mean,
so you can kind of
that's his
linguistically
resource
put that
generator.
together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
I'm proud of you.
I don't know. Maybe like instead of Earth in the background, I wish I saw the sun. You know, like just to. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. It's good.
So let me ask you this, guys. We just touched on solar gem, and I was thinking about solar gem the other day. We're doing kind of a deep dive on Vision, so we'll talk about his beam and his gem here. But is Vision the last character in release order that got a wild resource generator for anything he wanted?
Spectrum kind of has one.
Spectrum was earlier.
She was before him.
She's before him.
I don't know if you want to count Penny.
She has,
She
she's
does
wild
generate a wild
resource. She can
resource.
generate herself, right, with the suit.
But it's
also the
different.
host
It's not the
spider.
same. It's not just a straight up wild resource. It's like a whole.
Because
thing
those
with
early
her
heroes
mechanics.
all had, so many of them had resource generators.
It was popular earlier to have resource generators that worked on everything.
Some were limited, like Miss Marvel's limited, but like Cap
X-23.
and Thor and
I feel
Oh yeah,
like-
X-23 can generate anything. Oh,
X-23
Nova
has
came out after Vision.
Nova came
That's
out
like his
after.
whole thing.
Good call. Yeah.
Phoenix can actually do it too with power counters.
With the counters.
X-23
Yeah.
is the most recent, so I win.
it
this
is-
thought experiment just to work.
It is less common. None of the Guardians got one, I don't think.
And they're
Nebula.
all not that good.
Oh, I guess Venom kind of got one too.
Nebula has the
Nebula
ship.
has one. That's
Oh,
true.
right, Nebula does have just a ship.
And Venom just has his suit. He can just generate a wild resource. Okay.
Yeah,
Forget
but the
everything I just said.
days
We're all
of,
cutting that
like-
anyway because I was wrong.
Yeah,
And
that
I
was
can-
terrible.
I am
so we're gonna cut
infallible
that.
on this podcast.
Why would we even bring that up?
Okay, so the beam. So thematically, we talked a little bit about the solar gem and how the beam creates energy. I'm not really sure about the theme here. Maybe you know more about the comics than I do, Lethus, but is he known for being particularly versatile or flexible that he can, I don't know, what's the theme?
I mean, insofar as he can go to be like completely intangible or hard as diamond, yes. But I don't know, it's kind of a weird one. I think this is not problematically weird, but kind of an odd thing to talk about, because what does it mean to thwart? Like, a lot of schemes don't, like, what the thwarting actually would look like is unclear.
Lazy Titan's pointing his head. It's like brain power,
Big
right?
brain.
Sometimes that makes sense. It depends
Yeah.
on what the scheme is, though, and it's always kind of abstract. Like,
That's why smart characters have high thwart, though.
It
That's
is
kind of the
It
implication.
is abstracted. I think that's
The way that
implication.
schemes work are a little abstract, but generally, the smarter someone is, the more thwart they have. That's why Hulk has 0. That's why
is
Jean
that
Grey
why
has 3.
Parker has 1?
I mean, I said generally. Okay, let's not put me on blast here. But he has the genius trait, so that negates 2 of it, because
Does
he would
it?
then have a 4 or a 3.
Will we
which
ever
is-
see anyone who gets a 4
It better be Mr.
in one of the
Fantastic.
basic stats?
I hope not.
It better be Mr. Fantastic.
You don't think so?
I hope not.
What about Mr. Fantastic? He could be a
Smartest man in
4-0-0
the universe.
or
You
4-1-1.
Quit this podcast.
Really?
No,
Mr.
can't have
Fantastic
it.
could have 4.
4
I
is
mean, I
too
guess
high.
if Hulk only has 3 strength, then nobody can really get.
That's its own outlier that needs fixing.
I would be okay. I want to say on record with someone like one character having a 4. Like Hulk could have 4 strength because he's Hulk.
Nah, I don't
You're
think.
shaking your head.
So are you against a 4 in all 3 stats, or just thwarting?
I'm against a printed 4 for any stat on the hero side.
Why is that?
It's just too high. Like,
You could balance it.
this could be like a whole other episode, but like the design space they've allowed themselves using integers as low as they have is actually pretty limited. Like, because the values are all like 1 to 3 basically right now, you can't fudge with that too much without breaking the entire system. If the base number was like 10, and then you could, drop a little bit or add a little bit or cut in half, there's a whole lot of numbers you can choose from. But the range they have is so narrow that like you can't do a lot with it without completely upsetting the balance of the game, in my opinion.
What if we just 10x every number?
I mean, Deadpool tried, and FFG stopped
did.
him.
He did try.
It
Okay,
didn't
that's
work.
fair enough. Okay, so the theme here, I'm a little iffy on the theme, but
I mean,
I'm on board with it. I think it's fine. Like, the attack obviously makes sense. It's an energy blast.
I'm not a Vision aficionado, as it seems like you two are. I've never read a Vision comic in my life, but I've seen a couple Marvel movies, and I've played this game a few times. And it seems like the Solar Gem is kind of a thing he does, but the switching is that's his big thing, switching between, and that's versatility, right? He can do anything. He can have bullets fly through him. He can have them bounce off. He can be anywhere. He can float through walls, or he can punch through them, or like he can do whatever he needs to. And he's also super smart.
I have the moment. So, for everybody who's seen Captain America Civil War and the airport fight, this is the moment when they're running towards the hangar and Vision blasts the beam in front of them and cuts them off and stops them from getting away.
yes,
That is
it
Vision using solar beam as a thwart.
Wait, that's him thwarting or attacking?
That's him thwarting.
It's him thwarting.
Okay.
Him attacking is when Thanos pulls the rock out of his head and kills him.
That's
Wow,
not
that's
how
come
that.
on. There will be no shade thrown at
go.
my man Vision.
Thanos up. He stay up.
Okay, so the power of this card, I think we have to say right off the top, it's like a very strong card, and in
Do
his
we?
kit, it's very strong. Okay,
Do we?
I will say outside of the month, this is a very
Do
strong
we?
card. It is it's his best event card. It may be his best card
Really?
in his kit, in my opinion. I love this card as a Vision player. You do lose some efficiency, right? The 3 for 7 damage and 3 for 5 thwart are below what you would like to see for a hero card, if you're talking about the numbers, you nerds. But
I mean,
yeah,
we had to
I
get
know.
there.
You are gonna get there.
I'm absolutely
because
going to get there.
You're a nerd, but it is below the
That's
efficiency,
true.
and I totally acknowledge that. But what you gain is the flexibility to do whichever one you need. Now, before you say it, I will cut you off at the pass here and say it is not like Wasp, where you can do whatever you want. You can only do the thing for the form that you're in, right? I know you were going to say that, Lethus.
You don't know me.
He wrote the script.
Any chance to talk about Wasp?
He knows what you're going to say.
You're right there.
Okay, you do know me a little bit.
You're a Wasp fan?
I love the character Nadia Van Dyne.
Okay.
I
I'll allow
occasionally
that.
get heartbeartmed over Wasp's representation in Marvel
You've missed a lot,
Champions,
Lethus
but
Titan. You've missed a lot.
I have I thought I was going to have to quit the podcast right now. I almost hit the button.
We'll
I
get there.
almost
We'll
called
get
it.
there. Don't worry
No,
about it.
no. I mean, I'm a Wasp fan too. So go on. What were you gonna say, Lethus?
I wouldn't describe the card as powerful exactly. Like, it does give up on raw power in exchange for that versatility.
Yes,
It is a good card though. Like, I'm not gonna.
but that's the strength, I think, right? Like you do. It's not swinging web kick, which is 3 for 8, and it's not some of these other cards that have some kind of a kicker. But what you get there is the ability to do either one. So if you draw this into your hand, you can then say, okay, I need thwart or I need damage, and I can flip to the corresponding form and have this card ready to go, rather than it being split into 2 different cards that you then have to find. So like that is a lot of the source of its power.
Yeah, it's nice when you're playing in multiplayer and you draw this card and you look around the tables like, what do people need me to do right now? Because whatever you need, I can do it. Just let me know what it is.
That's vision.
That's the strength, right?
Yeah,
That's the strength.
So that's
That
why I
is
would say this is a really, really strong card.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like it.
It is
I do like the card.
outperformed mathematically by other cards. I will also say like that is the fun of the card. It's the fun is that I can, and I've said before, I value heroes and decks that are versatile. That I can do different things depending on what I need in the moment. I can just kind of flex, and I love that, and that's what I love about this card. I think it's really fun. You mentioned earlier it is attack and thwart traded. There are very, very, very few cards that are. I think there's some team-up cards that are. I think
Hit and run.
hit and run is very, very limited. But what this means is depending on what aspect you have vision in, if you're playing an aggression vision, you can use martial prowess to pay for this card, even if you're choosing to thwart. Likewise, you can use sense of justice if you're playing justice to pay for it, even if you're attacking, which is
That's big, actually.
pretty cool. Actually, it's a way to really help pay for those. Deft focus also pays for it because it's superpower. So with martial prowess and deft focus and his solar gem, like you're already paying for it.
The martial prowess, sense of justice being able to be used on this card is one of the coolest things about it, because it gives you a use for that resource generator to solve the problem your aspect is bad at. And that's really good.
I've found those cards don't end up in my deck a lot anymore. They did early on in the game. I don't know how you feel. I don't use them a ton anymore.
It's similar for me. I still like them a lot. I just think their kind of best use cases are a lot more limited than I did early on. Like, I used to put them in like
Yeah.
almost every deck, and now it's
rare.
pretty limited. But when I do include it in a deck, I'm usually pretty happy about it.
The protection one is the one I think I probably use the most, and not because I play protection the most, but I just think ratios of deck inclusion, I think it's pretty high for me, or higher than the other ones. But it's cool that you can use them. Like you can use the martial prowess one to thwart. That's like cool.
Yeah, I really like that.
Just to
didn't know that.
flex, you know.
That's cool.
All right, power and fun of this card. Titan, you got anything to say about it?
I haven't played a lot of Vision, to be honest.
That's a mistake.
Because, I mean, we definitely mentioned it before, that the versatility of Vision is not what I think is fun about games. I like to build a system that does something really well and only do that. Sometimes I get a little crazy and I have to build a deck that's really good at one thing and also good at everything else. And then I either build a masterpiece or don't have any fun, because then I'm doing everything and no one else gets to play the game. Or it doesn't work. That also happens.
You played Vision through a campaign of Mad Titan Shadow, actually, with me.
I did
a while back. I think when it first came out.
I played Vision. Yes, I think you played Scarlet Witch. I think that was our.
I think we
the
went thematically. Yeah.
talking point of it, and I'm pretty sure I played Protection.
I think you played Aggression. Actually, I think you collected minions.
Oh, even then I knew. Oh, right, I did the minion collector thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's an upside for Vision. For me, the versatility doesn't just click in my brain, because when I build a deck, I know when I'm going to use every card before I even play the game. In almost every case, there are some times where you're in little corners and you can use cards in weird ways. Doesn't happen a lot, I find, in Marvel Champions, but it can. Where like someone really needs to thwart, but it will, like, I have to stop and think about it to even like rewire my brain to do that. Because if I'm playing a red Vision deck, this card reads 3 for 7 damage, and the rest of that text is irrelevant. It doesn't even have that on there. Like, I will, if the villain's at 28 points, there's one threat away from the main scheme losing, I'm going to try and find a way to do 20 damage every time. Like, it's just how it works. And I'll have to sit there for like 10 minutes, realize I can't, and then do the other thing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't click with my play style, but it is objectively good. Having that choice is good.
I will say that I often use this card for damage. Like, overwhelmingly, I use it for damage because this is his big damage card. He has Super Dense Strike, which is awesome and gives him piercing.
That piercing matters.
But this is really the one that does the big damage, and he has enough thwart in his kit, I find. And he always has access to the 2 thwart, regardless of what form he's in, that I usually need the damage because I'm often building around intangible, because that's what makes Vision unique. We talked about that last episode. So I think I will usually use this for damage unless we really need the threat at the table. All right, well, let's move into final thoughts then. Let's jump into final thoughts. And Lethus, I'm going to let you go first.
All right, for Solar Beam, I'm going to rate it an 8 out of 10.
You love it.
It's pretty good. I think it's well costed for what it does. Like you'd mentioned, Swing Web Kick deals 8 damage for 3. This comes in just below that to make up for the versatility that it gives you. I like that it leans into Vision's sort of identity in Marvel Champions as being this really versatile hero who can always handle like whatever situation is at hand.
Mm-hmm.
The traits make it really easy to discount. Like you mentioned, if you have like Death Focus, Martial Prowess, Solar Beam, or Solar Gem, you can play Solar Beam for no cards from hand. That's kind of incredible. Good. To remove 5 threat and aggression if you want to. Like, that's unheard of.
Which means if you have 2 of these in your hand, you can probably play them both if you have those generators out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a good card. I think it fits him well. Yeah, I like it. It's good. 8 out of 10.
I think I'm going to give this 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll give it an 8. It's good. It is good. I have to, my own personal playstyles and biases aside, it is a good card. It does what you want it to do. And it does it for a pretty good rate, actually. Mm-hmm. Dropping only 1 damage and I think 1 thwart from like the standard for both options is a pretty solid deal. And I feel like we have seen other like versatile cards or like attempts at versatile cards, and some of those are like 3 for 4 threat or 3 for 6 damage. Like, they're not quite as close to the curve as we would like. This is just under the curve in a way that you understand that you're sacrificing something for the versatility, but you don't feel like you're really getting kicked for that luxury. Is this Vision's only card that does different things based on the aspect he's in?
Yes. Well, his cape does that too, but the only event.
But
yep.
The only event. So it could have been cool to lean into that more, but I also like the way... Either way, the theme of Vision comes through in that his different forms are used for different things, and he can kind of do whatever he needs to. This card is good, and the traits do actually. Superpower being on this card is big, because you're obviously going to play Death Focus and Vision. I didn't know that thing about those other research generators. I don't play them very often, but that is a cool edge case. It's good. The art's not taking away anything from it like some cards do. It gets you where you need to be, but it's not particularly exciting.
Well, I'll build off a little bit what you just said. I think I agree with you. I wish he had more cards that said, like, you know, if you're an X form, then you do Y. Most of his cards are just can only be played if you're in X or Y form, which to me takes away a little bit of that versatility. I mean, you can flip into whatever you need, but you can only flip once per turn, so you have to kind of judge what you're playing. Mass form, that is. So I do wish he had more that were like, you know, you play Super Dense Strike, and if you're in this form, this happens. If you're in this form, this happens. But then I guess you're just playing Shadowcat.
Bingo.
I think... So that is one thing that I think is limiting about his whole kit, but this card is an exception to that. It's one of the reasons I want to talk about it, because I think it does lean into the versatility we talked about last episode, which is that Vision can do whatever. He's very good at it. He can sit behind his, you know, damage reduction wall and build things up and take his time. So this fits that you're flexible. You lose a little bit of efficiency, but not enough to make it feel bad. It's not like... I think if it was like 1 point less, the card would feel a lot worse. Like if it was 3 for 6 and like 3 for 4 or something like that on the thwarting, you would feel like this card is bad.
Because it would be.
I think it's priced well. I think it's hitting the efficiency well. And 3 copies of it means you get it a lot. It's the only thing in his deck that you get 3 copies of. So you're going to draw it a lot. And a lot of his stuff, he has a lot of upgrades, a lot of things you play on the table. So often you see this card many times as the second half of the game picks up. When the villain's in the second stage, you've got Def Focus out and all your resource generators and your cape and all that stuff. You start to see that stuff more often. So I think overall, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I think this is an awesome card for Vision. I love this in his kit. I promise I don't think all of his cards are 10 out of 10.
That's not true.
Did you rate the last one 10 out of 10?
Well, that was his hero card. I don't remember what I gave it.
Oh, it was 10 out of 10.
Was it 10? Okay, it was 10 out of 10.
Absolutely.
Well,
All right. I gave it 10 out of 10.
far.
Oh, shucks.
Two's
What can I
a
say?
coincidence. See what happens next episode.
That's a great point, Lazy Titan, because next episode we are
You're welcome.
talking about another one of his events, which is Phase Disruption. So Phase Disruption will be the next card we talk about. I think we'll have more things to say about that. It's interesting and unique in a lot of ways. And I think each of the cards that we are going to choose really speaks to the character overall and his entire kit. That's kind of the point of this deep dive, is that we pick 4 cards and do weekly episodes, because by the end, hopefully you have a kind of holistic vision of what the character we're talking about is. Just like we did with the team-up cards, where we talked about 4 team-up cards, and I think you got a really kind of overarching view of what team-up cards are. Hopefully you got that.
But this time, the cards are good.
Yeah, the team-up cards, hey, we don't only talk about good cards, and I think that's to our credit, right? We could easily just
And
pick
anyone
the
who
best
sticks
cards.
around, good for you.
Yeah, good for you. The People's Podcast, they're all here. The people are all here.
The people are here. They're listening, and they're hungry.
We're going to
for
make the
more.
People's Podcast the thing. We're going to make it stick. Any other final thoughts before we let the people go? Lethus, do you have anything you want to say to them?
One nerdy math thing about this card. So
love it.
it is under curve on like how much damage it deals. But it's actually not exactly under curve on the thwarting side. There's not many heroes that have a 3-cost thwart event, and the ones that do don't remove 5 thwart or don't remove 5 threat, except for Hulk with the specification that they have to all be physical resources.
Then he does 3
or
for 5.
Groot. Yeah, it's 3 for 3 without 3 for 5 if you have all physical resources.
3 for 3. Oh my god.
And Groot, who removes however many growth counters he has worth of threat. But no one else just has like a static remove 5 or higher on their hero thwart card. So
I'm thinking Crisis Averted is
Yeah.
what I'm thinking of.
Crisis
It's
Averted
3
is
for
the
6.
closest comparison. Yeah, it's yes, I think
From
that is the best
main
comparison.
scheme only, I think, though.
It is.
So
Or it's the
It's actually-
aerial one, Agile Flight. Isn't that 3 for 5? But you can
Agile
split
Flight
it up.
is 5 and you split it, yeah. But for hero
That feels
cards,
bad, though.
like he's actually at the top end of amount of threat to remove with a single card. Like Groot is the only one who can actually go higher, which is a weird thing to realize.
I was going to give you a hard time for bringing up more points after we had made our final ratings, when I'd already given you the chance for final points. But then you made a really strong point and said that Vision is awesome and has the best thwart card. So I'm going to let it stand. I'll allow it.
These are the rules.
I don't
It's
know
my
if I
podcast,
I
man.
don't know if I. Whoa, it's the People's Podcast.
That's
Okay.
true. It is the People's Podcast.
Whoa.
It belongs to the people.
Do we have to depose you? What is going on here?
You can't depose me.
Send an email at winninghand.revolution.gmail.com if you also want to peacefully mutiny.
I'm not responsible for whatever you send to that email address. Lazy Titan is making that up. That is someone else's email address. I'm sorry.
That's my email
to whoever
address.
owns that.
That's where the revolution begins. You ever heard of Princess
This-
Leia?
Dear.
I brought you
That's gonna
back
be us.
on for one episode, and it's way off track.
And
you
you already
are,
you're creating a dictatorship. You're
You have
saying just
derailed
whatever
us.
you say goes. What
That's
is
true.
this? Come on.
Soviet Russia.
Might as well
No,
be.
it's not. This is the People's Podcast. Thank you all for joining us and suffering through whatever Lazy Titan is on about tonight. He is in a mood,
You're welcome.
but
We're sorry.
we got to talk about Solar Beam, and next time we'll talk about Phase Disruption. If you listened this far, take 30 seconds and leave a review. We appreciate it. From me, Boom Guy, and from Lazy Titan, and from Lethus, we will talk to you all next time. Thank you and good night.
Take care, folks.
Take care.